see your lives differently and reclaim your past so that you have a better sense of who you are today, so that you, A, have more fun, are more contributive, and can connect more with your family and community in a way that's giving back.
Welcome to Ira's Everything Bagel, where I talk with intriguing people about everything, their passions, pursuits, and points of view. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I appreciate it. Let's face it, it's not if a crisis will hit, it's when. And careers stall, relationships shift, plans get wiped clean. My guest today, Peter H. Bailey, author of The Epic of You, says those moments aren't breakdowns, they're invitations. Drawing on the hero's journey and decades of leadership coaching, Peter helps people recognize their call to adventure and choose paths that expand rather than shrink their future. This is a conversation about chaos, courage, and what comes next. The Epic of You is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, and all the usual places. And for everything about Peter, go to peter-bailey.com, peter-bailey.com. Follow him on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And Peter, welcome to the show.
Ira, great to be here. Thanks so much for the good work you're doing and connecting people with people.
Well, that's part of the mission here, or the journey, as people like to say as well. I
Yeah.
was reading some of the praises of your book in your book, and usually you see those, they go about a page or so. It looked like it was half the book was were people praising you. But one reviewer, Eric, wrote, and I want to quote, because this is, I think, a great way to frame the conversation. Quote, this book is one part true life adventure story and one part life reframing handbook, end quote. I thought, oh, that's a great way to summarize a book. Do you agree with him?
Absolutely. Getting to the ripe young age of 66, we get an opportunity to step back a little bit and say, wow, look at this ride I've been on. What does it all mean? And oftentimes there are elements in our past that we're not happy about, things we regret, things that hurt us. And it kind of shifted for who we were and how we behaved. And I wanted to go back and reframe those and say, but wait, like every pool ball that clicks into another pool ball, everything that happened to us made us who we are today, Ira. So why would I want to separate those? But it takes reframing to really own the positives in some of those hard things.
Is it hard to do that if you are by nature not a depressed person, but you tend to repeat the same mistakes that you have throughout the decades of your life? And you, when you review it, especially when you wake up at 5 in the morning, you can't get back to sleep, and then you start reviewing things and you realize, I'm not accomplishing what I started out to accomplish, or what I thought I was going to accomplish. I'm not who I thought I would be. In fact, I'm not sure who I am anymore at this point. So, can it work for that kind of person?
Absolutely. And I think, some of the things that I've noticed in the work that I was doing writing this book is that that little voice is not always a friend of ours. It's waking us up at the middle of night and not saying good things to us. It's saying bad things to us, whether it was Jiminy Cricket, when you were growing up with Pinocchio on your shoulder, or any of the other ways of thinking of the good voices or the bad voices. But I tell about it in the book that I grew up with the disease of comparison. And so that disease is something that is unfortunately prevalent in society. And we're always comparing ourselves to other people. Where should I be now? Shouldn't I be richer? Shouldn't I have done that, degree or climbed higher in my organization? Rather than really assess, wait a second, look at the family I've started. Look at the connections I've developed. Look at the people, the way I am with my neighbors, and really valuing those things for being heroic. It's not about having to climb a big mountain and to be heroic. I like to take it back and say, look at the little things people are doing in their lives that are truly heroic. As single parents, somebody working at a job for their families, but it may not be their life spirit, but the fact that they keep doing it, I want to call them out and say, you are being heroic.
Is it partly the media, mass media message and social media messages that go out on a daily basis, 24/7, that causes a lot of people to doubt their own spirit?
Well, I think we're a consumer-based society. If I get this, I will be happier. If I have that new thing, I'll be happier. And that's kind of how we were brought up, whether, a couple of hundred years of that indoctrination makes me think I will be better when. But a lot of the recent happiness research shows that actually, if I choose to be happier now, I'm actually going to have a better shot at being happier moving forward. It's more a state of being, not of acquiring or accomplishing.
I want to quote, this time I'm going to quote you from the book.
Yeah.
And this is it. Quote, when asked at a business lunch today why I am writing this book, The Epic of You, why I'm writing this book, I paused and thought while poking at the grilled salmon salad and then answered, because I wanted to write what I wish I had been written for me, unquote, or end quote. Uh, why isn't this kind of a book been written before? We always hear of all these books that have been out there for, it's not even this decade. It's still, as far as back as I go, there's always been self-help books. There's always been self-actualization books. There's always been leadership books. There's always been coaching books. So I wonder, obviously none of those books help you. So you had to write your own book. So that clearly makes your book unique compared to all these other books. So what's the missing ingredient in all these other books? And it's not to put down these other books because people benefit, I'm sure, from reading book A, book B through Z. But yours is a wholly different approach. So clearly you wrote the book because nobody wrote the book for you. What's the key message there in that book?
Yeah, great. Well, I tell it from my early years of trying to figure out, some of the calamities in my life, and certainly other people have had worse things that have happened to them. But my father had an aneurysm before I was born. So I was born into a family of a single parent, my mom working two jobs, and she was very heroic in that effort. And, she struggled with her own addictions and relatively loving but dysfunctional family. And as young people growing up, we're trying to figure out what is compass north. And so there wasn't a book that spoke to young people trying to figure out who they are. Then, as I got into the work world, there really wasn't a book for me to figure out how do I chart and navigate my path based on who I think I am. And then this has got a recovery story. It's got, the fact that I traveled in 50 countries and I had amazingly wonderful and challenging experiences overseas. How do I process all that? I didn't find the processing books, the ones that tell you, here's what that means and here's how you can use it. So it's no diss on anybody's previously written book,
No.
but it's really about an opportunity to say, how do we look at sort of a memoir of our lives and then go back through there and unpack them in a way that I feel better today for what I have lived, a well-lived life. Plus, it's a little bit of a leadership uh, book on helping people understand the Joseph Campbell heroic journey model. So I walk everybody through that circle of where are they in choosing a path, a call to adventure? What guardians of the gate have they bumped up against? What accomplishments are they coming back from? And then how do they re-enter? And when I discovered that tool, I found it so helpful to begin to give me a map. And that's really what I see this book being. It's a map to looking at your life, both in hindsight, current state, and looking forward. A map that will help me understand everything that's happening. How does that fit along this heroic journey circle? And the last part of the book is actually a guidebook for anybody who also wants to do this work themselves.
You mentioned Campbell, and you're making the assumption, which I think a lot of people do, that everybody knows Campbell and the story. So if you could give us a brief synopsis of what that baseline is for you to then write your book.
Oh, absolutely. So Joseph Campbell was a humble philosopher and professor at Sarah Lawrence College, and was teaching and doing research. And what he uncovered was that every culture in the world tells a story about somebody leaving the village, going out, having a big experience, coming back changed, and re-entering their village. Or the story of the changed or the stranger that comes to town and disrupts everything, the status quo. And frankly, all of our books, the Odyssey, the Iliad, uh, Wizard of Oz, The Lion King, all of our movies are based on that type of a story where the Lion King gets banished, goes out and gets stronger and comes back and fights the evil Uncle Scar, you know? And yet we don't have that much in the story narratives of our lives until we look for it. You know, The Wizard of Oz. How do we go on a journey together and come back changed from that experience? So the heroic journey model is actually a circle that talks about what's your point of preparation. And I have the circle in my book going counterclockwise. So if you can almost follow that with me, then there's a call to adventure. You know, come move to Las Vegas where you're living, or come move to New York, or come climb this mountain, or come climb, or go run a 5K or your very first marathon. Any of those first challenges have an argument. Do it or don't do it. Do it or don't do it. And you'll hear voices that tell you both sides.
Why don't we
Once
get
we,
that? Yeah, I was going to say, why don't we ever get the good voice when we wake up in the morning? Can you explain that?
right, the one that says don't run the marathon, you know?
Well, just the one that says, you actually did a lot of good stuff, as opposed to the one that says, well, you haven't accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. We always get the bad voice, not the good voice.
Right. Well, and even Joseph Campbell talks about things that happened to us that we didn't choose, like 9/11, like COVID, like my dad's aneurysm, you know, like divorces or being laid off at a later point in life. And like, ooh, now what do I do? Those things are changes that are thrust on us. And yet, because they impact us, we're now on a heroic journey. And I tell that, go ahead.
No, please go continue.
Yeah. So then you bump into, if you decide you're going to do this, you bump into barriers that might challenge you. Are you sure you want to do this, Ira? And it pushes you back a little bit. And yes, you muster all your courage and you say, yes, doggone it, I'm going to do it. And you push forward. And now you're in the road of challenges. And now it's one of those, ooh, seemed like a good idea at the time. You're in the new job, you've moved to a new city, you're working overseas. All those things that we choose are hard and they get harder and they get even harder. But the story tells that if we stay with it, there is a gift. And that gift is that thing that happens for you, whether it's on an outward bound course or military service where you've been able to fight for your country and save lives and do what you never thought you could do. You're coming back now as you re-enter. We think we're all special because of all of our experiences, and we slam into the guardians of the gate again, who push you back, Ira, and say, where do you think you're going? Sit down and shut up, you know? And yet we're coming back from these experiences thinking we've climbed the mountain. Look at me now. But what that return helps us do is actually re-enter. Because coming back from overseas, coming back from divorce, coming back from losing a child, coming back from all the calamities, also the good things that happen for us, promotions, it's hard to re-enter the community we left because they don't really want us to change. So that's a very cursory review of the circle. But I looked at that and then looked at my life and said, place all of those hard things on that wheel and place all of those things that were hard. And some of those I said, well, wait, you know what? I've been sort of excluding those, Ira. Some of those gave me honey to my heart. They made me compassionate. Why not own that? And those other hard things, I like to say, gave me strength to my sword arm, gave me resilience and capacity to endure. Why would I separate those? So now I'm moving forward with a better sense of each of those things made me who I am today, sculpted me, or even if you think about a diamond, cutting a new facet that I might shine more brightly because of those experiences. I don't see a lot of that narrative out there. And right now, I think people need it.
No, I think you make a very good point. And I want to point out to our audience, both listeners and viewers, that you come across to me as considering what we talked about earlier in your many trips around the world, your many experiences, bad and good, but you don't, as a result of those, you don't appear to be either cynical or overly sophisticated, which I appreciate, especially with the shirt you're wearing. You look like you're about to cut some trees down after this interview.
Right.
So you're very down to earth, and I think that's an asset for people in this world of trying to help people, especially with realization of what they can do if they really think about it and plan and say, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to push myself to do it. Because I
Right.
think it's a very human experience to not want to get off the comfort zone.
Right. Well, and I like comfort. I'm not at, I like bagels. I like good coffee. I like having conversations, and yet we're going to get more growth from the hard things. There's, a sharpening when you rub against something hard. And I think those are the things in our lives that we need to revalue and say, ah, those hard things made me who I am. How do I pass that on to others? So I started working in South Bronx, New York City, working with urban youth in doing this type of outward bound leadership development to help transform their sense of themselves. And that I've had a 45-year career of really looking towards building leadership perspectives for people who can take it to their corporations, can lead better in their lives with their family and their communities. And it's just been a passion all my life to say, not only am I doing this work, but where can I share this with others too?
Do you find it's a challenge when you're dealing with different groups from socioeconomic levels that are different and also culturally? There are groups that are different as well. And just on a broad level, for example, you may go to a completely atheistic group of people versus a overly religious group of people, or a very affluent group of people versus a very, you mentioned the South Bronx, very poor group of people. Does your approach vary, or are you able to connect on all those levels and all those different cultures?
I think that's one of the things that Joseph Campbell found too, is that it really links through all cultures. In Native American culture, there is the sense of the vision quest, that hard time that you learned from that gave you back a sense of yourself. In Aboriginal Australian background, there is that sense of the walkabout where you follow a song line and you begin to connect to history and place and yourself and your role in it.
Mhm.
Again, I don't think, going back to the story, growing up as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant in suburbs of New York City, I was looking around for, where's the map? How do we figure out this life? And so I think people like you who link other people who are discovering these things, giving it to other people, that's really been the gift, is to bring it to all groups. And to be honest, they seem to want it. I've done the heroic journey with CEOs in a circle, and they're all telling their life journeys, personally and professionally. I've done it with leadership groups. I've done it with cohorts. I've done it in Indonesia. I ran a corporate training center in Indonesia for 2 years and found that they were as open to learning about this today as they were, with any group that I work with here in the United States. So I do think that's where truth lies. Truth lies below the level where it links all cultures. And so we're not selling you anything. We're just tying you back into a story that exists.
How important is curiosity in all of this?
Oh, great. I think that and reflection. So two things would be important is curiosity of, I wonder how that works. I mean, I was the guy that took apart the toaster oven to see how that worked, and never could put it back together again. But it's the kind of thing like, how does this work? What makes it work? And or how do people work? And I'm fascinated by working with people. I think curiosity is a great first step in cross-cultural communication. Why do you see it that way? In fact, I don't know how this activity will come across for you, but I'll do it real quick. If
Sure.
you were to look over your head and draw a large circle in a clockwise fashion over your head, 12, 3, 6, 9, and then bring that, so with your own finger above your head, then bring it down, it's now going counterclockwise when I look from the top. And I think, what's that about? If my finger is going clockwise above my head, but now below my face, it's counterclockwise. It's perspective. What's changed? I call it the same tube of experience, the same cylinder, but where I see it from changes everything.
Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I see it going clockwise both ways,
Yeah, so look above your head,
right?
and it should be like a pizza over your head,
Right.
12, 3, 6, 9. Now look at the top of your finger, and if you haven't changed it, it should be going now 12, 9, 6, 3.
Okay. So that's all a matter of perspective, is what you're saying.
Right. And so if you take that curiosity to every single culture in the world and every single generation in the world and gender differences, start with curiosity of, I was brought up this way. My friends in Iran were brought up that way. And tell me why that's important to you. Oh, that makes perfect sense in your worldview. No wonder, even though that might be completely opposite from what I grew up with.
Are there some outliers to this in this way? I'm thinking of two groups particularly. One would be people who have mental health issues, cognitive issues, so they can't necessarily, it's not that they can't grasp what you're saying, they can't process it to help themselves because they're
Right.
stuck in a neurotic system or maybe even a psychotic system where they can't break out of that, even with curiosity and a willingness and want to. They just can't get out of their own way. There's that outlier group. And the other one I would think are there are people, which I think everyone would admit, that have no curiosity about anything, have no self-reflection about anything. They're not necessarily overly bright. And I don't mean it in a negative way. It's just the way a group of people are. They function in a certain way, and that's it. They're not going to grow. They're not going to learn. They're not going to be curious about anything. So would you concede that there are those outlier groups?
Well, I would say first off, I am not a psychiatrist or a brain science doctor to know what
Coincidentally,
elements.
yeah, coincidentally, neither am I.
Yeah.
I just read the
And
question.
so as a social observer, I
Yes.
would say yes, those things are exist with curiosity and as I mentioned, reflection. If you have the capacity to reflect on your impact on the world, you're partway down the road. Like you're able to do this work. I have a little formula that experience plus reflection equals real education. And if you don't have a way of processing your experience or that doesn't suit your way of thinking, then you're probably not aligned with an awareness of what we call emotional intelligence. And that's a wonderful model by Daniel Goleman. And I'm sure you've seen the four boxes. Upper left is self awareness, and that's awareness of self. In that column is taking action on myself. Next is the upper right, and that's awareness of others. And the lower right is taking action on or responsibility or developing a capacity to have awareness and take action that build bridges with others. And so it does come down to how emotionally intelligent are people. If they haven't been taught it, they may be doing it intuitively, but they might actually find a way to learn their way into it because emotional intelligence is a tool, it is a skill. We need to build it for everybody. And I find that the people who really embrace these types of models and self-reflection and self-improvement are further along on the emotional intelligence scale. Even in corporate America today, you will have people who are more or less emotionally intelligent.
The book gets published. You feel completed. You've struggled with it. You've gotten through it. You've done it all, but your curiosity still remains, doesn't it, Peter? In other words, even though the book is done, you will learn something from the book getting out into the world. People will read it. They will write you or comment to you, or someone like me would mention a part of the book, and it will
Yeah.
strike something in your brain. And go, you know what? For the next edition, I'm going or next book, I'm going to go an additional way because I just learned something. Am I on the right path there?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Stephen Pressfield, famous writer and wrote the film Bagger Vance, talks about as soon as you finish your book, start writing the next one, you know. But I'm still riding this roller coaster of what it took to publish, write it, then what it takes to publish and distribute. But I'm already thinking, oh gosh, that's not in the book. So I'm starting notes already on maybe there's an element of that that I want to explore. So yeah, people who are curious are always looking for the next piece that they want to do. I'm not necessarily generating an immediate second book, but I do think I'm not done. I've got more to do, and this will be a fabulous opportunity as a platform to talk about not the epic of Peter, it's called the epic of you,
Mhm.
Ira, and all of your listeners. It's their epic. And I really want people to see their lives in this book.
How did you decide to use the term you referred earlier to Joe, but specifically epic of you versus story of you versus narration of you versus journey of you?
Yeah, well, it's great. There's a lot of ways you could position that. And I was working with my editor team, to be honest, at the Greenleaf Book Group Press, and we were just playing with varying ways of saying this. And epic is underused and fast. It's intriguing, huh? And we always think of an epic being, like the Star Wars epic. And yet, wouldn't it be nice if that single parent raising two kids at the public laundromat started to see themselves as living an epic life? And what would that do for them, recognizing the heroism of them in their own lives? How might they treat people differently if we start seeing everybody living that type of life?
Which gets to a major point, which is most people, I would venture to say, and again, I could be totally wrong, but I would say that most people don't view themselves in epic ways. They view themselves in a lot of cases as ordinary, which is fine. There's nothing wrong. In fact, you need ordinary people to make society work. You can't just have all extraordinary people because then nothing would get done. Everybody would be writing books and creating art, and meanwhile, the dishes don't get done. The products don't get made, the crops don't get pulled out of the ground so we can eat. So you need, obviously, and I'm being somewhat facetious, but in other words, you need ordinary people. But because of that, most people don't see their lives as epic. They see them as ordinary, by the way, which is you can be completely happy leading an ordinary life.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid my screen might have just frozen there for a moment,
Oh, you're
but
fine.
I believe that we are both extraordinary and ordinary. Like we are unique. You are a diamond, I am a diamond. We are formed differently by the pressures of the earth and society and our life experiences that constructed us to lead you into running podcasts for 20,000 people. And that's different than somebody else's journey that crunched them into a diamond to go work with animals, or to be a school teacher in an urban elementary school. I think we all have to recognize that we are extraordinary and simple in that we're all here to do good things. We're all here to help others, ideally. And so I do hope that people do begin to see themselves as for some of the epicness or the heroicness of their lives and their parents' lives. I mean, raising children today is not easy. And staying married and in a good partnership is not easy. And going to work every day and commuting 45 minutes or longer is not easy. Recognize that you're making an effort to do the best you can today. Huge. This is a big deal.
We have about a minute left, Peter. Tell us what you'd like people to, if you could narrow it down to one, which I know is almost impossible, what would you like them to take away from reading the book, The Epic of You?
See your lives differently and reclaim your past so that you have a better sense of who you are today, so that you, A, have more fun, are more contributive, and can connect more with your family and community in a way that's giving back.
Wow, that was succinct, and I appreciate it. Great way to leave it. My guest has been Peter H. Bailey. He's author of The Epic of You. It's available on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, bookshop.org, and all the usual places. For everything about Peter, you can go to peter-bailey.com, peter-bailey.com, and you can follow him on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And Peter, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, it's been great talking with you, Ira. Thanks so much. And thanks for having such a broad network of taking good people to good ideas like this.
Well,
Thank you.
it's thoroughly enjoyable. And thanks, Peter, for being on the show. And join us every Thursday for a new schmear on Ira's Everything Bagel.